All right, we are back. So in this one, what we need to do is reduce the size of this item right here. So let's go back to our code and go to the options function. And then in here, let's reduce everything by 50. So this will be 150, this will be 250. So let's see if that looks good enough. Okay, so if we add some items in there we go. I think it's looking good. So let's add another item here. Now, there's a function called CTL position. So CTL position, you use this one to position items on the interface here. So now, since I want to add multiple items and I want to add them in a very specific way on the left and on the right, I have to use this one. So the first parameter that you add is the item that you want to position, and then you add its X and Y position that you want to do. And then if you want, you can also add its width, even though in this case we've already done that. So I'm just doing that to show what can be done with this. So if I open this again, you might not notice a difference, or maybe you are noticing a difference. Okay, so 0,0 has gone really into there, so that's not good. So let me add 10 so that it leaves a little bit of a space, and then let me remove this width value so that it can use this one. All right, so let's do that again. Okay, there we go. So I want to add a drop-down list over here, so let's do that. Now, drop-down list is called CTL pop-up. Of course, we need a label, so the pop-up is going to be morph, the selected morph. It will only show one morph at a time, the selected one. And then the next parameter is going to be the default selected item in the list, which will be 1. And then the next one is going to have the list of items. Just like we used LB items on this one, we have to create another array that will contain the pop-ups. So the items in the pop-up. So I'm going to say morph list. That's what I'll call it, the morph list. So it has to be, I'm going to put it up here, something like that. Okay, so let me give it a name so that I can give it a position as well. I'm going to call it because we'll need to access it later as well. So I'm going to say morph, I forgot an L and H here. I have to change this one as well at the top. So I'm going to say morph pop-up is equal to. So I'm going to put this at the top here as well, because I want to be able to access this outside of this function. So let me give it a position as well. I'll say CTL position, and I'm looking at the morph pop-up, and I want the position. Of course, the width, I want it to start right after this list box, and I know the list box has a width of 250 pixels plus the 10 that I've pushed it aside, that's 260. So let's try 270, and then 10 for the top. And then we can also put a width here if we want. Let me try 100 pixels. Oh, I don't need to say pixels, just like that. So let's see how that looks like. Invalid argument 3 type to CTL. Okay, so the variable must be considered it must be considered already an array. So to do that, let's give it one value at least, minimum. So let's do that in, let's just say no morphs, something like that. so that it knows that this is actually an array, and it's not working now because I guess apparently I can't do this at the stop here. So let me cut that out. Let me copy the whole thing though. I think that's the error. So let me come down here and do it right here when it's being created. Okay, so let's try that again. All right, so there we go. No morphs. But we've gone too far this way, so I guess that's not 250. So let's try some different numbers, 170, and then let's try 200 for the width. See what we got. All right, not bad, but let me move it a little bit this way. Let's try 190. All right, that's more like it. So now when I select an item here, I want it to populate the list over here of morphs. All right, so let's do just that. Now before we do that, actually, let me add one more control down here. So let me go back. Let's add a control. We are already in the options. Let's go down here. So it's a good idea to actually put comments in these things so that you don't get lost. List box. I can say morph groups, because this gets very complicated quite quickly. And this one will be the morphs pop-up. And I want to add one more thing, and that will be the what do you call that, mini slider, or we'll call it a mini slider as it is. So a mini slider is that item which you use, you click and drag around left and right, just like they have with a normal morph mixer. So let's add one and see. It's called CTL mini slider, of course. And so we start with a label. Let's just add a generic label like value, and then we will need a default value which will be 0, and then we'll need a range. So let's try -100 to 100, something like that. And then let's give it a position as well, CTL position. CTL position. In order to do that, we need to give it a name. So we're going to say my mini slider is equal to. So these names can be anything here. And then let's give it a value of, we know 190 is the left on this side. And then the top, we have to skip this one. So let me try 30 or 50. That's about it. Then let me get this and put it at the top, since I know we're going to need to access it in other functions as well. So if I come back here, remove that, add it again, and there we have our mini slider. So the idea here is that when I select a group, then I'll have a list in here to choose from. I choose the morph, and then I make the appropriate adjustment that I want to that morph, and that's it. Actually, I don't need a mini slider. What I need is an actual slider, because I think people, since we're already used to doing that in the normal morphs, so I think an actual slider will be better. So let's go back and do that. Instead of the mini slider, we create, I'm going to say my slider here, and let me remove that as well. CTL slider. I think that's the official name, if I am not mistaken. Let me just confirm that a little bit. Yeah, it's CTL slider. So now CTL slider requires I think that's the same number of requirements, default value. So let's see if it's going to give us an error instead. Okay, invalid argument 1 type to CTL position. Okay, that's because I changed the name here, but I didn't change it here. So let's go back, remove this. All right, that's more like it. So we can do this, we can do that. Okay, pretty cool. So the idea now is that you select a group and then you select your morph and then you add a value that you want. And then you go and select another object, and then this will update, and then you can do the same thing over again. All right, so we'll continue in the next video where we see how to populate this area right here when a user clicks something. I'll see you then.